hit the record button. Yeah, excellent. So I think first of all, thank you, Rishabh, for joining. I should call you Rishabha, right?
No, the A is
Rishabh
silent. So my dad just felt Bh should become BHA, but otherwise the A doesn't. So it's Rishabh only.
Right, and also your last name is tricky as well. I mean, it is two different sides of the country.
Yes, so I'm the Punjabi Nayyar. So this is the OP Nayyar and Kuldeep Nayyar wala Nayyar.
Right.
So I look more South Indian, but otherwise it's the Punjabi Nayyar. So that's the difference.
Lovely.
Nice. So just a quick intro on IMCI, Rishabh, as I've also already shared with you. So obviously it's part of the international consulting body, and the India chapter was incorporated sometime in the 70s. And some of the forefathers of this was actually also Mr. Kohli, FC Kohli from the TCS, and lots of other folks who were involved. So since then, in India, we almost have about 6 to 7, I think, different chapters. 6 which are active, but there are few also undercards. So you would have IMCI members who would at least have to have consulting experience to be part of the body. And within the IMCI, the objective is, one, how can we help consulting as a practice become better? And second, from a standard and ethical point of view, how can we ensure that there's some sort of a benchmarking? Now, this directly connects with the global body as well. There's a certification, which is the only certification in management consulting, called a CMC, or Certified Management Consultant, through which that becomes a core standard in the practice. And I mean, it's not so popular in India yet, but at least for some overseas European or US proposals also, they specifically mention that a consultant has to be a CMC. Now we have to do much better. Obviously, our branding is not as good, so maybe this talk will help us to do something about it. And also, thank you for all of you to join, and I'm sure a lot of you will be listening to the recording of this. I wanted, maybe with all the sessions that we had so far, this will sort of give us a flavor which is something that we are experiencing, because some of you are running your own brands, some of you are working and working towards to strengthen your own brand. One of the challenges that we are facing is this transition from something which was very communication driven, where you would communicate and was sort of unilateral with limited input coming in. But today you would see even the Fab India advertisement, where the outcry is such, and the conversation around something which becomes so crazy then that it completely goes to a different plane. So there are a lot of sensitivities which have come in, at the same time, a lot of opportunities as well. But for sure, one thing is constant: the way we have to look at the brand and some of the nuance. That is something that we definitely look forward to get a perspective today, and a lot of other things, I'm sure. As I've already shared Rishabh's profile, you would see an extremely strong CV that he brings, and he for people who just joined, he is the Punjabi Nayyar and not not hailing from Kerala, but that doesn't really matter. After his MBA, I guess he started his career with Lintas, and that was a long career when it all started. And he did mention that it was all out of accident when he stumbled upon advertisement back 2002, and then he sort of started liking it. He also had another feather to his cap. I think he was running an MBA school at the same time in Pune, Genesis Business School. And from there, he then progressed to his other careers, which was on 82.5 Communications, which was part of the Ogilvy group. And then I think most recently, he is the co-founder at Fatman, which I'll leave Rishabha to maybe talk and elaborate a little more about it. So I think that's that. Rishabha, please, very happy, welcome. You should take things forward. Just a quick hygiene point for all of us. If you have questions, I think we have limited audience today. So I will still request if you can drop down on the chat box, and then we can coordinate. We can always do it with you asking the question without needing any sort of coordination. But please be on mute as Rishabha takes us forward. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, great. Let me just get the screen shared so that we know that's sorted, and then we can. Yeah, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm hopeful. I mean, this is a disclaimer I put up at the outset of all my presentations that I make. Whoever kind of makes the mistake of calling me, then I kind of put this as the first slide, saying that I pretty much will share experiences, because in advertising, beyond that, I mean, we don't do too much. While there is a lot of data, there is a lot of big data, but most of what I'll talk about is based on my limited experience, and that I'll just share stories of what seems to be happening, what seems to be working, what doesn't seem to be working. And it might work, or it might just like Fair and Lovely, which also claims to make you fairer, and I've kind of applied a lot of it for many years, but you can see that I haven't gotten the results in that sense. Yeah. So interestingly, I always start with Fair and Lovely, because my career started on Fair and Lovely. In 2002, when I passed out of this MBA school called GIM, which is Goa Institute of Management. Lintas was my campus placement, and Fair and Lovely was the first brand that I would work on. And I must tell you, I wasn't as excited about it as my mother was. When I called back home, I spoke to my dad, and I told him. So he asked me that, company kahan hai, what's the package, what's the location, what's the profile. And then he said, you also inform mom, otherwise she always complains that, you don't chat with her. So I said, okay, let me tell her also. So he gave the phone to her, and I told her Fair and Lovely. And she didn't ask me about the place, the package. She had only one question, that tere ko Fair and Lovely free milegi kya, right? So that's the only highlight she could see out of it. And obviously, once I joined my job, I kind of spoke to my brand manager, and I said that, so I gave him a logical argument. I said, we've been taught in our management program that, I mean, you must use a product before you advertise it, otherwise, how will you do justice to it if you don't know the product? So he was quite surprised that, okay, finally, there's a person who wants to subscribe. So he gave me this big carton, and as you can see, I kind of used Fair and Lovely, but not that that's had too much of an impact. I mean, just to add there, I also, after that, for a brief while also, worked on a brand called Clinic Plus. And then you can see the kind of impact that has also had on me, right? So I think perhaps the most useful advice of the day is that, be careful in terms of a lot of these products, because eventually, I mean, you're lucky if they work, much like this talk will be. Okay. So anyways, let me get started. And I'm going to start with a short, just a quick fire set of questions, and then feel free, if any one of you wants to ask questions and all, I'm happy to keep it conversational, happy to discuss it at the end as well. I mean, whatever works better for you guys. So I'm just putting up a set of questions. Just think about what you think is the response to each one of them. Just hold on to it in your head, and then I'll reveal the answers. And it's just a point that I want to make. Just go with each of the questions. Ask yourself, what the answer is. How many people in India access internet through mobile phones today? Okay. Then the next question is, how many viewers does Bollywood attract across the globe, right? Which is the most watched video on the internet of all time? How many engineers do we produce in a year in India? Which is the biggest e-commerce portal in India? How many people voted through the SMS facility in Indian Idol when it came to the final round? And what percentage of people shop on Flipkart, from small towns, right? Just to give you a sense of where we are, and where I'm headed, because these numbers are quite mind-boggling, in each of these cases, right? So let's actually put out the numbers and then get the conversation started. So here are the crazy numbers. I mean, the most viewed video is one video, which is Baby Shark Dance. Okay, and I actually had to go back and see this video, and it's you'll see it and you'll say, what is this video, right? But that's the reality. 9.5 billion views. 648 million out of say what 737, 40 million people who access the internet are doing it through mobile, right? 1.5 million engineers. The biggest e-commerce platform, no, it's not Amazon, it's IRCTC. Yeah, I mean, forget what's happened in the last year and a half, but that's the reality. 90 million people hooked onto this. I mean, and 40% of people of Flipkart, consumers of Flipkart are today coming from. And then therefore, the point one's trying to make is that clearly we're living in very, very exponential times, right? We're not looking at times which are incremental, where, you know, things are happening at a steady pace, at a slow pace, and then so on and so forth. We're living in times where it's crazy, right? I mean, imagine reading stories like saying coffee could not be delivered properly because the crows attacked the copter that was delivering, right? I mean, imagine you don't I mean, when would you have thought 10 years ago that there's going to be a bot, there's going to be a machine delivering coffee to you? But that's the reality of the times that we're living in. And just to kind of further emphasize on that point, look at this as a statistic. Every 20 minutes on Facebook, 1 million links are shared, 2 million friends are requested, 3 million messages are sent, right? And this is after all the criticism of Facebook, all the conversations of ban Facebook, boycott Facebook, leave Facebook, blah blah blah, etc. Here's the reality of numbers, right? Or 5.6 billion, right, is the searches, right? And if you compare that, and that's the daily searches, and if you were to now compare that and actually look at the fact that what this was, it was 2.5 billion in a month, right? Imagine 15 years ago, what was 2.5 billion in a month is 5.6 billion in a day, right? Another statistic which I'll talk to you about is in terms of just the video consumption, right? For example, look at this. Crazy it is. Radio, which we all know is a medium, one of the earlier mediums after print. It took 38 years to reach an audience size of 50 million. TV managed to do that in 13 years. Internet in 4 years, iPod in 3 years, Facebook did that in 2 years, right? And we don't know what is next. And you'll probably look at a statistic of someone having done it in 3 months, right? But that's the way we're headed. I mean, 5 hours of video content is uploaded on YouTube every minute. 5 hours. I mean, you and I will be at it for 60 minutes. Imagine the content that's getting uploaded. And that's the reality of the consumer that we're talking about, right? Whether it's about the way he shops, or it's the kind of content he consumes, the extent of content he consumes, the change in his mediums, the way he does his commerce, everything. And then therefore, from that point of view, if you think about it, all of this is fundamentally shifting the brand building experience. You know, for many years, a lot of us who I would say are old timers, and I call ourselves old timers because see, we were in the pre-digital era in that sense. I mean, we like most of us got our email IDs when we started working, and so on and so forth, or at best were in college and stuff like that. And then therefore, for us, digital, when it first came, we kind of said, okay, kuch to aaya hai digital, right? Kuch to fad hai, kuch to log karte hain. I remember so many conversations. We'd discuss it with the client. We'd tell a client, sir, kuch nahi hota, ye sab Facebook पे post डालने से ना, आपको अगर product बेचना है तो आपको दूरदर्शन पे advertise करना पड़ेगा, right? And for many years, we all got away with these kind of conversations. I mean, we had these conversations, but the reality today is we just cannot afford to have these conversations. Just to throw a number at you, if TV today is claiming a reach of around 900 million in India, digital is talking about a 750 million reach. Look at the how close those numbers are, guys. 900 and 750. So anyone who says, like, for many years, I'll tell you, I have myself had those conversations where we tell a client, sir, digital se reach nahi milegi. Digital se you can talk to some 5% of these cool young people. That's not true anymore. All of that, none of that is true anymore. The reality is there are brands. Today, there are 1,000 crore brands which have been built, which have never even gone mass media, right? I have spoken to so many startup brands. You talk to them. The other day only, I was talking to this client of mine who we've recently done a campaign with, Dhoni. We've done a campaign on a brand called Khata Book. You must have heard about it. It's a brand which does. I asked them, I said, yo, you've got so much of funding. Why don't you go TV? He asked me, the founder, he said, what kind of budget would you suggest on TV? I said, look, TV is going to be expensive. He said, still tell me, Rishabh, what budget would you suggest? I said, you'll need about 35 to 40 crores. You know what he said to me? He said, this campaign that I made you make, I'm going to spend 100 crores, but on digital. Yeah, he said it's not about the money, it's that's just a notion that people carry, that brands who can't afford it go on mass media. The reality is, his whole point was, I don't want to be on mass media. I am looking at targeting each one of those micro, small SME entrepreneurs, each one of those small entrepreneurs, and all of them, he said, are perennially hooked to their phone. I mean, why do I want to be on TV? I mean, the reality is, whether it's the stock markets, it's happening on their phone, whether it's the match, the Hotstar is on their phone, and so on and so forth. And that's the reality. We're saying, at the end of the day, we've got to understand that we're living in the era where the screen is that screen in our hands. And therefore, this is fundamentally changing the way we look at the entire thing. This is fundamentally changing what we're trying to do. And then therefore, let's get into the meat of it, right? The fundamental change that I'm wanting to call out, and you'll see this as the theme of my presentation, is the fact that it's no longer a communication economy. And let me tell you what I mean by that. See, what is communication? It's marketeer generated content. It is messaging that I have initiated. It is messaging that is calibrated by me. It is messaging that is controlled by me. And I'll tell you what I mean. And I'll give you this crazy example. So I used to have a friend who used to work for a film marketing company. Okay, so film marketing are all these people who promote movies. So I one day was sitting in his office and I saw a poster for Rais, which had a headline on top saying releasing 24th September or whatever the date was. Okay. Next to it was lying another poster, which had Rais only, but on the top said running successfully all over India. So I asked him, okay, his name is Varki. I said, yaar, Varki, this picture is not even released. How do you know it's running successfully all over India? You know what his response was? He said, advertising hai. हम तो लगा देंगे running successfully all over India. And that's the bit about advertising, right? That's the bit about advertising, that it's calibrated, it is controlled. Every brand says, I am number one. You listen to radio for 1 hour and every channel will say, Pune ka number one radio station, Bombay ka number one radio station. But that's communication. But the reality is today, who is in this world? Right? When I go into like classroom scenarios and I do a lot of teaching and I ask students, which is the last ad that you've seen? Will you believe it? They struggle to give me an answer because they say we don't see ads, right? And then you say, but how don't you see ads? They say, because we don't see TV. What about ads on Facebook? We ignore them, right? And then therefore the reality is that from a communication world, we're moving into what is a conversation economy. And what do I mean by that? This is multi-way dialogue. Yes, we can talk about a brand, but it's not only you talking about the brand. It's all of us talking about the brand. Yes, you may put out a view on the brand, but at the same time, I am entitled to challenge them. And I'll give you an example, very recent example. Adidas has signed Deepika Padukone as their brand ambassador. Okay. And see how now communication versus conversation works. So obviously the PR manager at Adidas felt कि अरे यार ये बड़ा news है, इसको एक PR push देते हैं, right? And all of us do that for our companies and all. So he did a big press conference, did a big PR release, and Deepika, welcome to the family, released on all social media handles. Now see, what would he be expecting? He'd be expecting some conversation saying, oh, way to go, Adidas, very good, and so on and so forth. See what the conversation starts. The conversation, the first guy puts up a post saying, when we have iconic athletes like a Mirabai or a PV Sindhu, why does a sports brand need a Bollywood celebrity to endorse? And how do you challenge that? And then everyone starts. One guy takes it even further. He degrades the conversation even further. He says, Deepika Padukone is a lady who's been asking for mal, as shown in that video, right? All of you know about that controversy. Why would she be on? And then it just degenerates. Now imagine sitting in the Adidas office and imagine being the PR manager who put it out. You did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong. But the reality is that's conversation, right? Conversation is people, they will talk about your brand, but they'll say what they want to say. It's based on their values, their beliefs, their passions, their interests, and so on and so forth, right? And then therefore it's organic first. That's the first thing. Like I at times get clients who say, what is our, I ask them, sir, brief kya hai? And they say, yaar, hame na, give us a viral video. And then you want to tell them, mere haath mein nahi hai to give you a viral video. I mean, think about it, and many a times as clients, we're guilty of saying, just give us a viral video. How do I decide that? It's the people who will decide whether something goes viral or not, right? We talk about ice bucket challenge, but people made ice bucket challenge. And therefore, first thing, it is organic. You cannot maneuver it. You cannot control it. You might be able to make some small fixes to it, but you can't control the slant. I mean, look at what you and I are now right now glued to. The whole nation, what is trending is hashtag Aryan Khan, right? You can't drive that conversation. There is the whole Bollywood lobby which is saying ye bacha hai, bacha hai, bacha hai. There is the whole BJP lobby which is saying 23 साल का बच्चा कौन से कब से होने लग गया, 23 साल का आदमी है, and शाहरुख खान ने 23 साल में फौजी कर लिया था ये अभी. But the point is, that's how it is. It's organic. Second, it's non-linear. You don't know who will say what, where will it start from, who will it originate from. Many a times you may not even start the conversation as a brand, but it may start about you, because someone decided to put something about a brand. E.g., what happened a year ago with Zomato, where that lady claimed that Zomato delivery boy punched her. No, that's not a conversation Zomato was even wanting to have. But suddenly a lady puts up a bloodied nose and says, this is what happened to me. And boom, I mean, next thing we know, it's trending. Then it's unpredictable. We just do not know where it is headed, what it is going, what shape it is going to take. Like, look at this one very, very recently. You've all seen this conversation. Mr. Bachchan signing up Pan Bahar, right? And doing that ad with Ranveer Singh. First, a person asked him on Twitter saying, sir, why would you do this? He gave a very authentic answer saying, क्योंकि मेरे को इसके लिए पैसे मिलते हैं. That is why I am doing it. Everyone needs money to survive. So that is why. But then an NGO put out a whole conversation of saying, sir, by doing this, you are a role model for every generation and you're encouraging the young generation to look at tobacco. Now imagine that conversation. It just ignited a fire. And therefore, Amitabh Bachchan had no option but to withdraw from that campaign. He has returned their money. Apparently, they are even putting a case on damages on him. But look at the power of conversation. Look at the power, not that Amitabh Bachchan didn't know what he was signing up for. I mean, today Amitabh Bachchan saying, sorry, I can argue, when Amitabh Bachchan is not a bacha. When they came to him and saying, Pan Bahar karoge, he could have said no at that time also, if he was that worried. Today he's saying all these things, oh, I didn't realize I'm promoting tobacco. I mean, come on, yaar. How didn't you realize you're promoting Pan Bahar and you won't end up? But that's the reality. It's unpredictable. You just don't know, right? Like the example Chandan gave, I've also got it on one of the slides. I mean, Jashne Riwaz. I mean, you're telling me Jashne Riwaz is an Urdu word. Hold on. You're telling me Happy Diwali is what? It's Hindi, it's English. Then how come you don't have a problem with Happy Diwali, right? How come you don't have a problem with the word Hindi itself, which comes from Urdu? But you can't control it. It's organic, it's unpredictable, it's natural, it's not seeded. And that's the reality of the world that we're living in. Whether you like it or not, any brand can say, I don't want to be part of the conversations. Who's giving you that option? The reality is, who's giving you that option? Because whatever you do on a brand, like look at this example I'm giving you, it seems like a very, it seems like an example that nothing would happen. What did you do? You put up a post saying, Deepika, welcome to Adidas. It was a very harmless post. How would you know this would degenerate into a conversation of saying, oh, what is it? Why this Bollywood fad? How would you know? I mean, Deepika must be repenting the fact, because suddenly now all her drug abuse is coming into it. I mean, it goes from anywhere to anywhere. But that's the reality of the era that we're living in. Because the reality is today, we get defined by our conversations. And that's the point I want to first land before we talk about why is it important for brands. See, think about it. Who do you like to today be with? Who are your friends? Who are the people you like to connect with? Who are the people you'll step out for a drink with? These are people who you can connect as conversations. Today, if you think about it, all of us are connecting because we are connected to a topic, where people from Pune, from Bombay, from Hyderabad, from Ahmedabad, from Chennai, we don't necessarily, all of us may not even know each other, but we're connecting because we connect on a certain topic. And that's the reality of connection between human beings. There are people who are connected to Hindutva, they will connect. There are people who are connected to SRK. I mean, what is this whole thing of these people who are camping outside Mannat? And they are staying there and they claim to be saying that we are outside Mannat so that we can help Shah Rukh Khan. I want to ask them, what will they be able to help? I mean, when the country's best lawyers are not being able to do anything, but think about it. It's just a common belief saying, oh, our Shah Rukh Khan is in trouble. We will be there for him. And will you believe it? People have traveled from across the country to just be outside Mannat saying, Shah Rukh ko laga, to I'm there to help. But that's the way it is. Then the conversations reflect our desires and aspirations. Think about it. What do we comment on? What do we share? Like I'll give you a simple example. What are the kind of holidays we share? There are certain holidays that you'll put pictures of on your Facebook profile. There are certain holidays you won't put pictures of. There are certain things you will put. So, and that's the reality. It allows us to share our values and beliefs. What do we support? Are we right wing? Are we left wing? Are we center? Then the foundation of any relationship, if you think about it, who do we connect with? Who do we love? Who do we stay loyal to? Everything stems from conversations, right? Today, if you think about it, as people, we're forever having conversations. I mean, you think about this 1 hour, you will be having a conversation with me. There might be a parallel conversation on email. There's a conversation happening on your Twitter feed, on your Insta feed, and that's the reality. And therefore, if conversations define us more than ever before, we've got to, as brand marketeers, also understand that it is no longer about communication. Yes, communication has a role to play. Mind you, I'm not saying that you don't need communication. The point I want to land is you can't just do with communication, because communication now these days. I tell clients, communication is like that, burst that you can do once or twice in a year. Because think about it, how many times can you run a mass media campaign? I mean, with rates becoming as prohibitive as they are on impact properties, whether you pick up an IPL, whether you pick up a KBC, a Big Boss, how many campaigns can you run? But the reality is, conversations are on 24/7, 365 days a year. If you are telling me that you will do communication for 4 weeks out of those 52 weeks, as a brand, you'll never hit home. And therefore, we are saying you have no choice but to say, I will do communication, but on top of that, I need to also play in the conversation economy. The point I'm making is it's no longer a choice. You can't say, I will not have a social media presence. I will not engage with people socially. That's not, even for personal branding, I can tell you today, you cannot, I mean, everyone will tell you that even from a personal, even from a professional branding point of view, on your LinkedIn, on your Twitter, you need to have activity every week. You can't say after 6 weeks or 6 months, I'm doing this, because even the personal brand, and therefore the paradigm is changing. And given that the paradigm is changing, what are the new rules? What about it is changing? And therefore, how do brands look at it differently? What have some of the brands done? Let's now get into that as a conversation. Think about any brand today, okay? And I'm doing this as an experiment. I'm going to put out 4 or 5 examples. You won't be able to think about their ad, but you'll be able to recall their conversation. Yeah, like look at this as an example. All of us somewhere read this Domino's tweet that happened. Yeah, this was a tweet, just to give context. Mirabai, after winning the gold, was asked on a news channel by a journalist saying, what would you do now? And she said, I would like to have pizza, because I've had to control my diet for a very, very long time, and therefore I want to have pizza. Immediately, mind you, in 2 hours flat, Domino's put out this tweet from the time Mirabai made that statement, right? And of course, in our world, we call this domain as moment marketing, where you look at something and you immediately put out something. It's called moment marketing. Now, this is what they put out. Congratulations on bringing the medal home. You brought the dreams of 1 billion plus Indians to life, and we couldn't be happier to treat you to free Domino's pizza for life. Congratulations again. Now, the point is, this suddenly became the conversation. Yes, there was also a campaign that Domino's were running called Dil Dosti Domino's. No one remembers that, but everyone remembers this. Of course, any conversation will have multiple sides. So there was a side which said, well done, Domino's, what a great gesture. And there was a side, Domino's, you're being exploitative. You're using Mirabai Channu to promote pizza. But see, that's the reality of the conversation economy. You can't run away from that. But the point is, today, when you think of brands, you recall more conversations around them than advertising around them, right? Because that's the way it's happening, right? The example that we spoke about at the beginning, the example Chandan was mentioning, right? Jashn-e-Rawaz. How many of us have otherwise seen the 2.5-minute film? I don't even know. I mean, the reality is, will you believe this, guys? I had not seen the 2.5 minute film, but what hit me is suddenly ban Fab India. So I don't even know what are people talking about. Then what do? I get onto the internet to say, kya ho gaya bhai? Why is everyone? Because that's the way conversation, like I said, it's non-linear. It's not like pehle ad aayega, fir wo aayega. And then you're wondering, what is the big deal? And then I saw it. And then I was like, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. Apart from just the fact that agar main us same ad mein end mein likh deta Shubh Deepavali, everyone would have said, oh, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But that's the reality. But that's the conversation. Now, you don't remember Fab India advertising, but you do remember this one, which made headlines across the world. Naomi Osaka. She lost early in the French Open. And you all know, after a match, you have to attend a press conference. She was feeling bad. She was feeling anxious. She was feeling upset. She refused to attend the press conference. Immediately, it erupted into one big problem. She was levied a fine of $15,000, and the media started criticizing her. Right? And after that, the Janta came to her rescue. The world came to her rescue, saying, what is wrong with us as people? She is feeling low. She is feeling down. She has lost a match. She's feeling shit about herself. And therefore, she's not in a mental state of mind to ask 10 journalists those silly questions that, how are you feeling right now? And she says in an interview, she says one of the worst questions in an interview is they ask you, how are you feeling? What do they expect? Do they expect me to say I've lost the match, but I'm feeling great? I'm feeling like opening a bottle of champagne. How are you feeling? You're feeling like hell. So therefore, the whole point being and then Time carried this as a story and a lot of other channels lapped on. Then there was an NGO, which I thought was brilliant marketing. One NGO for mental health. They actually said, we'll pay now Naomi or fine of 15,000. And they put out a tweet that to any sportsman in the world who's wanting to take a break, we'll pay the fine, right? Which I thought was brilliant, because the point is, it's conversation. Suddenly that NGO, no one knew about that NGO. And in one tweet, the world knew about the NGO. Which advertising, which communication campaign can do for you? No can. But this did it, right? And that's the power of these conversations. And the list can go on and on. I mean, this one, Ronaldo moved those 2 bottles of Coke, right? I mean, imagine you're the Coca-Cola brand manager. You paid through your nose to be one of the main sponsors of the cup. And then the biggest player in the cup just puts the bottles away and says, have water, right? I mean, you're like, you have to like go to FIFA and like punch someone. And of course, whatever happened there was a separate story. But look at what our very own brand Fevicol does. It just puts out one little digital post which says na bottle hategi, na valuation ghategi, right? Saying that had these been Fevicol bottles, or had these bottles been stuck with Fevicol, and suddenly people just spoke about this, shared it as a joke. Now this goes viral, to any client, every client saying, give me something that is viral. It's not it's the message that goes viral, right? Because remember, viral is about what? Viral is about you wanting to share it. And that can't be forced, right? And unlike those silly virals that come, if you don't send it to 20 people, you will have bad luck and all. That's a different world. But that's not the world we operate in. We've got to let people want to take. And this kind of stuff, imagine that hits your WhatsApp, you want to share it with your friends. And that's the power of a lot of these, right? And therefore, the point one's trying to make is that in this new world, if the world is moving from a communication to a conversation economy, where conversations define who we are, the reality is, as brands, we cannot say we will stay away from it. Many brands have tried to say they can stay away from it. Many brands have tried to stay away from it, but you just can't, because the consumer will pull you in. They will talk about something about the brand. I mean, they'll talk about your delivery boy, they'll talk about your service, they'll talk about your response, they'll talk about your data collection being unscrupulous, they'll talk about your cookies. I mean, anything. And therefore, the reality is, conversations are how brands today are alive. And therefore, let me also tell you, as any brand, you cannot, if as a brand owner, you say, I will only have positive conversations, let me break the myth. That is not possible. That is not possible. Every brand will somewhere see positive and negative conversations. But you are in a good place as long as your net conversations are positive. See the point? I mean, I'm saying you take the best of brands like Apple, for example, the most valued brand in the world. Even when I do a social listening analysis on Apple, I do get negative mentions as pickups as well, right? It's not like, but the point is my overall score on Apple is a big positive. And that's the way. And reality is today we are saying as brands, I need to play in conversations. And therefore, whether it's conversations over a cup of coffee at Starbucks, whether it's conversations over between family and friends saying, oh, you saw that brand, oh, you saw what these guys have done, oh, you saw what this person has done, or it's about colleagues and business partners, because the reality is we are having conversations. I mean, there is so much of conversation India has had in the last 4 days about that one Zomato customer service girl who said, sir, Hindi is our national language. I mean, she's factually correct. She's factually correct, but at the same time, imagine the way the world goes. I mean, the hashtag was fire that girl, and eventually, what did Dipinder have to do? Dipinder had to he had to continue because there was also a conversation saying don't fire her. So he reinstated her. First they suspended her, then he reinstated her. Then he went on and apologized. And then at the same time, he also put out a message saying, as a country, what have we gotten to? Why is our tolerance and patience so low? Chill. That's a tweet he put out. But the point is, people are talking about brands, but you've got to figure. It's not like brands are not making it to conversations, because brands are a part of our life. And therefore, it's not like we won't talk about brands, right? You will talk about brands, and please understand, everything is a brand. I mean, even Aryan Khan in that sense is a brand. But what are the conversations around us? That's the point that we're really debating. And therefore, we're saying if that's the way in which brands also live, the reality is we need to make changes. What is it? How should a marketer, if these are the times where we're saying it's not a communication economy, it's a conversation economy. In this conversation economy, brands have to participate. They get dragged in even if they don't want to. How should we think? What should we do differently? That's the real question on the table for each one of us. My first submission is, first and foremost, we've got to start recognizing that the pie is changing. I'm sharing data from a Zenith study, and it's a reasonably robust study, as you can see bottom, 3 lakh plus interviews, right? And across, multiple projects across countries. Look at this data. What is it telling you? It's telling you the classic mass media, TV, radio, print, etc. globally, 20%. That's all that it's impacting. Of course, in India, these numbers are higher, but they're only declining if you look at their rate. But look at things like advice and recommendation. Look at things like one-on-one conversations, right? If you put just those two together, which is 26 plus 16, you will realize that, almost 40% of the conversation is being led in a way that it's organic and it's conversational. It's not channelized. It's not owned by brands. It's not navigated by brands. I mean, brands can participate in it, but they are also as much participants as anyone else who's part of that conversation. And therefore, that's a reality we have to recognize, because till as a marketeer, we continue living in this mythical world saying, nahi, mere ko farak nahi padta hai. I'll let people say what they want to say on social media. I will run my ads. The numbers don't add up anymore. So that's the first starting point for us to really recognize. And from that point of view, we've got to ask ourselves, what are the new rules? What is changing? And of course, there are many things. I'm trying to put them out as 6 new rules, saying that these are the fundamental things that are changing. And therefore, then look at what is it that we need to do. Let's start with the first one.
Rishabh, at this point, can we just take a small pause and maybe just
yes, please. Yes,
have a couple of questions around it?
Super. Let's do that. Let's do that.
Nice. So I think I'll take one of the questions which is also posted here. This is by Rishabha. See, I think what you have opened up is a very hard-hitting fact. I mean, it is all happening around us. But the way you have put up, and this is an endorsement from most that you can already see in the chat, it's a very hard-hitting fact. Because the way we were programmed, because you started saying we are, most of us, I mean, all of us are old-fashioned. To that extent, most of the brands, at least the CXO levels, are also old-fashioned. So there's a big transition that most of them are having to do, and we are still grappling with it, because one thing is very clear: you don't have control over a lot of things which you had control before at a communication stage. Yes. So when we talk about let's say also from a consulting point of view, I think a question which Rishun is saying, what are some of the finer nuance which probably as a consultant it is always advisable, or things that is important that we put forth to our prospective customers, to ourselves? What are some of the things that you think we should do?
Okay. So see, one of the main things now, I think, which is increasingly getting overlooked in this whole thing is a lot of times we tend to think about the short-term perspective of, brand growth, brand revenues, brand turnover, meeting targets, and that becomes the conversation. And then we tend to do what seems right for that. So whether it's about putting out a promotion, whether it is about, reducing price, offering a certain variant. But what we tend to ignore is the larger concept of brand equity, right? We all know about brand equity. We all know that, a lot of us will come and go, but brands are technically supposed to have an infinite life. I mean, brands are never supposed to die. In fact, brands, I always say, are like Bhishma Pitama. They're never supposed to age also, because they're just supposed to go on and on and on. And then therefore, I think one of the things that perhaps a lot of us at such senior levels in terms of being consultants is, I think, the conversation on the long-term equity that we're building. Because what is happening is a lot of the data that we get subjected to is pushing us to navigate the now, which is how do I make sure that I get to the next round of funding. So therefore, I've been told that, okay, if you can show a turnover of say 300 CR, the next series can happen for you. And therefore, you've seen brands which will, discount like crazy. They will say, okay, 1,000 rupees off on the first order, this off on the second order. And there is a lot of cash burn that happens. But what we don't realize is that at the end of the day, when we're doing a lot of this is not brand building. See, consumers are today smart. Consumers today, I always say, consumers these days are opening 4 brands and actually picking up the one that's the cheapest on that day. And we think we're building brands, but we're not. We're actually building a Frankenstein in that sense, which will come to haunt us only. Because, suddenly, like there was this joke that my Domino's client was telling me. He said, we have made India so used to deals. And imagine the head of marketing of Domino's is telling me, he said, we have made India as Domino's. We have made India so used to deals on pizzas that the day we don't run a deal, India chooses to have dal sabji. That was his statement. So he said, the day we don't run a deal, India saying, it's okay, I'll wait. Tomorrow you'll run a deal. Today I have dal and saroti at home. I'll have. So I think one of the things which I feel we should really push our organizations that we advise is, what's the long-term brand equity you're building, right? Because look at all your iconic brands. Look at the Apples of the world, the IBMs of the world, the Nikes of the world. They've all not been just built on the numbers here and there, right? They've been built on a larger brand equity that you're really trying to drive. So I think that's one of the fundamental things that you're trying to look at. And from that point of view, the second thing that I'd want to say as part of that answer is that therefore, don't only look at share of market. Okay, there is this other concept that we keep on talking about. It's not a data concept. We call it share of love. Share of love. Okay, we say that at the end of the day, there is a share of market that you will enjoy, but what's the share of heart that you enjoy? How many consumers, and then I'll give you again a statistic which is mind-boggling. You all know about tattoos, right? A lot of us have tattoos. Tattoos have become very popular. Now, let me tell you a statistic. The world's most tattooed symbol is the cross, yeah, which is the symbol of Christianity. And there's no surprise that the cross is the world's most tattooed symbol. It's the biggest religion and all of that. The surprising one is, which is the world's second most tattooed symbol. Yeah, that's the one which completely surprises all of us. That's the Harley Davidson logo. Imagine, right? And 80% of those people, look at this statistic, 80% of those people don't even own a bike of Harley Davidson because they can't afford one, but they still want to have that tattoo because they're saying, I can't get the bike, but I am going to wear that brand on my sleeve. And therefore, that's the second thing I think that we've really got to push people, saying that don't always think about business. Also think about the fact that consumers' loyalty is not always with the person who gives you the best deal. In fact, that's transaction. Transactions happen when you talk numbers, right? Love happens when you talk about what you can do for me, what you mean for me, how we have shared values. And I think that's the other conversation that I think. So equity and somewhere trying to drive share of heart, share of love are perhaps the two things I'd say we should push more for.
It was very well, I think, very well articulated and shared. There's one more. This is coming from Dr. Pradeep Desai, is currently stationed in Ahmedabad. Uh, so point is, we see this. I mean, the chart that you are still presenting this clearly says that there's a shift now. And we all know, let's say that the televisions, the newspapers had a certain costing of when we had to put forth a campaign, but there's a drastic change in what is happening today. Uh, Now, from an economic point of view, has the promotion, the budget that you have to do, the spend that you have to do, has gone up or down, and to what extent? Has it gone increased very many folds or decreased many folds?
Okay. So I'll give you a 3 to 4 year perspective. See, overall, the broad answer to that is the budget has still gone up. Okay. And I'll tell you why is that happening. So what is happening is that a lot of the mass media now is only getting used for high impact. Okay, so what is happening is, and let me sort of little bit, thoda sa I'll digress into a media deployment point of view. See, classically, we would use only mass media because that was the only media I had. So I'm a marketing person, I have TV, radio, etc. I'd put and I'd optimize for that. So I would take, say, I would take a KBC, but at the same time, I would also take 9XN music songs because I needed reach, I needed frequency. Now what people are doing, right? Now, when you're looking at mass media, planners are only taking impact property. So what a planner is telling you is that in the media, I will say, let's only take KBC, let's only take Indian Idol, and let's only take Big Boss, for example. Let's not take INXN, let's not take anything else, which is why you will find that for non-impact things, like something like a pro kabaddi league, you'll not even find ads in the ad break, because many a times no one's buying that. And then therefore what happens is that because of that, because the saleable supply of mass media has reduced, because of that, mass media costs have still gone up. So you get, it's not that because digital is booming, mass media costing has gone down, but mass media has gotten now divided into this part. So there is one side of mass media which is very bankable, which gives you high TRPs, which is high viewers and all that kind of stuff, which is in huge demand. So for example, like I'll give you an example of Sony, just to give you that context. Sony struggles to sell any of their GEC serials. They do very bad at it. But Sony makes their entire killing out of their reality shows. Z is exactly the reverse. Z is not able to sell reality. They've tried so many times, new shows, etc., but their GCs make a killing. But eventually what is happening is that because the inventory, the saleable inventory is reducing, even traditional media is going up. That is one side of the story. Now, the other side of the story is that digital, which earlier was priced very low. See, first of all, let me tell you, while all of us keep saying digital, reality in digital is that eventually it is just two companies, which is Google and Facebook. Today, if you look at advertising spends, let me tell you the bitter pill, 84% of marketing spends in India by marketeers are happening only through these two platforms, 84%. Right? So that's the reality. Yes, if you look at more developed markets, Amazon advertising is also coming in a big way. In India, it's still smaller, but my long-term read is in another 5 years, it will be divided between these three. These three guys will enjoy 90% of digital revenues, which is Amazon, Google, and Facebook, right? And therefore, whatever we may do to try and break up this monopoly and all that, that's the reality. Now, in these, what has happened is the minute these guys have realized that their reach numbers have increased. See, if you think about it, why were all these platforms earlier not charging too much? Because they could not deliver reach. So while if I'm a brand manager and if I'm trying to sell, say, Axe deodorant, I would take digital because I'm trying to sell to an 18-year-old boy who, a Facebook would tell me and Insta would tell me is covered. But if I'm, for example, wheel detergent, I would not take these platforms. But today, when a YouTube comes and tells the brand manager that, look, you're looking at the mass housewife, the mass market housewife, and I have 66% reach in that segment, you can't not buy it. And therefore, these mediums are shooting up. Let me give you statistics. Google has been recording growth rates, year-on-year growth rates of 80 to 90%. It's mind-boggling. At a time when, like, my own business, which is advertising, we as an industry are growing by some 8%, right? And then you look at these brands which are growing by 100, but that's the reality. So what is happening is digital mediums are becoming costlier because that's where everyone's headed. And mass medium are getting divided, and therefore everyone's wanting that pie which is still marketable, which gives you a return on investment. So that's also becoming costlier. So now, to add numbers to it, overall, if you look at the last 3 years, it will average out to about 12% growth we've seen as an industry in terms of overall ADEX, which is advertising expenditure, right? But yes, the last year and a half did see a drop. So if you do look at 2019, 2020 numbers to be precise, you will see a drop, but you will also see a recovery in 2022, because most brands are, because the market's very competitive, and most brands have realized that you've got to put it out. So overall, the expenditure has increased, but that's been the reason that, that the mass media is again becoming costlier, because not everything's selling anymore.
Thank you, Rishabh. I think you can continue, and then at the last segment after,
super.
We'll again take more questions.
Done.
Thank you.
So I am now getting into, what are some of the rules of these new world, okay? And these are just some fundamental changes that I'm calling out. I mean, very, very, very commonsensical. When you see each one of them, you will say, of course, this is happening. And I've kind of structured each of these rules as what was the old way and what is the new way. So classically, what have we grown up to? What did all of us study when we were growing up, and we practiced, all of us, perhaps for 2 decades, 3 decades, and now what seems to be the conversation? The first one is, we were always taught that brands should have one singular message. Uncle Kotler, as I call him, Philip Kotler, a guy we all read at some stage, he would always say, he introduced a concept to us as people in management and marketing called USP, unique selling proposition, which is one thing that you sell, right? And brands were built around that, right? Here's a brand which has stuck to this line from the time it was launched, right? We all know this brand. By the way, this is the largest laundry brand in the world. Okay, Ghadi, because of the sheer size of India. I mean, not that they are a global, but technically they're the largest laundry brand in the world, built on this line of pehle istemal kare, fir vishwas kare. And that's been the old world of brand building. However, in the new world of brand building, there isn't about one message. The new world of brand building is saying, and then look at where it's coming from. The new world is saying that if I want people to have conversation around my brand, if I just talk about one message, then that conversation will become stale. Today, you and I are enjoying talking about Aryan Khan. If you and I meet after 20 days, we'll not be interested in talking about Aryan Khan. That's that stale conversation, right? Much like how a couple of days ago, we were interested in talking about Kangana Ranaut when everything had happened, and then now we've forgotten about Kangana. So the reality is, in the conversation economy, everything's got a shelf life of couple of days, if not hours. And therefore, as brands, while your core may remain one, you've got to be at it, and you've got to put out messages. Like, look at this one. I found this quite interesting, and take it in the right spirit. Look at something that these guys have put. Bhel delivered faster than bail. Yeah, it's just so topical, right? With all of India talking about saying Aryan Khan ko bail kab hogi? What is taking his bail so long? You're just saying, look, bail delivered faster than bail, right? So but that's the reality. If you look at Zomato, one of the most popular brands, and if you are into moment marketing, I would urge you to follow the Instagram page of Zomato, even if you don't otherwise buy from that brand. They are brilliant. They have a team, and let me tell you, this doesn't happen overnight. A lot of clients keep on telling me, oh, we want to be like Zomato. And I tell them, sir, Zomato has 30 people team, which only thinks about what next we are putting up as content. They are only the whole day. They are not given business targets. They don't need to drive sales. They don't need to look at supply channel, anything. Their job is, boss, keep Zomato in conversations. Make sure we are always in the conversation, and therefore there is multiplicity. There are things that are happening, there are things that are not happening, and so on and so forth, right? So that's the reality. That's one of the things. The second one is the fact that a lot of us were always told that take one proposition and then keep reinforcing that, keep building on that. And if you think about it, we've all grown up to this thing called Raymond's The Complete Man. Right? If you think about how many generations this man, we've seen ads where the man is a great father, we've seen ads where he's a great husband, then we've seen ads where he's a great son, and so on and so forth, right? But Raymond's the classic school of brand building. Just keep driving, complete man, complete man, complete man, because brands will be built on repetition, right? However, the new world is saying, look, you refresh your proposition. Yes, you have a proposition, but you can't just keep on putting out the same message, because no one's going to engage with that message. No one beyond a point is going to share that message. No one is going to see it. It'll become a blind spot. And therefore, an old brand, but this brand is brilliant in the way it's evolved, right? It's an old brand. It's a brand called Amul, right? What a great case study of a brand. Imagine, one of the oldest brands, but today on digital is seen as one of the most popular brands. And that's the other thing for anyone, many a times we have this myth that, oh, new age companies can get digital, old age companies can't. Here's an example in front of you. I mean, Amul is as traditional and old age as it gets, but they've managed to understand that our core is taste. We are utterly butterly delicious, but we can't keep on doing just ads on utterly butterly delicious. We have to say utterly butterly delicious, but in different ways. And that is what I mean by refreshing the proposition time and again, putting out newer messages. That's the second thing to keep in mind. The third thing to keep in mind is one way. This is a very important point. For the longest, we were told that you can say what you want to say and you'll get away with it. Right? I mean, think about some of the most iconic ads on Doordarshan, which, a lot of you and I have grown up to, right? I mean, Nirma, washing powder Nirma, iski jhaag ne jadoo kar diya. Right? You put that ad today and within half an hour, someone will troll you saying, itna jhaag acha hai bhi hota hai kya kapdon ke liye? How much water? Imagine, like today, I keep joking that if you put that ad, someone will troll you saying, is so much jhaag not wasting water? And how is that good for environment sustainability? Because that's the thing, the troll army. I mean, the people, and therefore the reality is you can't think of brand building this way anymore. Like for the longest, brands like L'Oreal have done this, right? 5. So they've done 5 signs of aging, 5 signs of looking good, 5 signs of hair fall, 5, 5, 5. It is marketing speak. No one's going to have conversations around this, because for most, this is unreal conversation. Today, you've got to live with the fact that messaging, see, you can, and I keep on saying this, that you've got to think about the fact that your whole thing, it's almost like a havan. You're not the only one at Swaha. Everyone's going to put something into that Havan Kund, right? Everyone's going to, so everyone around your brand is a participant. And sab log kuch usme dalna chahenge. And you've got to let everyone play in that. Because remember, you can't alone do it anymore. And it's never going to work. And therefore, you've got to do it multi-ways, right? And I'm putting up an example of the Dove Real Beauty campaign. What an iconic campaign. It's one of the world's most talked about campaigns, where Dove, just to give you 2 minutes perspective on how this campaign came into being, because I was lucky enough to chat with the lady who came up with this campaign. Okay. And it's a beautiful story. So she said, we were thinking about coming up with a new campaign for Dove. Okay. So that is what they were working on. Right. And therefore, while they were trying to do that, they were doing some focus groups. All of you know what are focus groups, where we call consumers in a room. And she said, in the focus group, we had one question, which was about saying, when you think about how beautiful you are, what are the things you like about how you look? And she said, woman after woman, every woman saying, there's nothing beautiful about me. My eyes are not right. My lips are not right. My eyebrows are not right. My ears are not right. And she said, we are sitting in the other room on camera, which is how you watch focus groups. We are looking at that lady in the screen saying, yaar, tu achhi bhali dikhti hai, soni dikhti hai. Why are you saying all this? What is wrong with you? And therefore, when they started digging deep, they realized it's the stereotype of media. It's what we have seen in TV. It's what we've seen in cinema. It's what we've seen in advertising that has given all of us a view that all of us think we don't look good. And that is what Dove decided to take a dig at. They said, we'll take a stance. So they came up with this purpose statement of theirs, and see how powerful this statement was. They said, our statement is, Dove believes that beauty comes in all colors, shapes, and sizes. And therefore, they said, real beauty. Okay, they launched a campaign, and this was an award-winning campaign. They launched a campaign. You guys all know about Photoshop. And you guys all know about how we are made to look pretty in Photoshop, right? Even our wedding photos, you'll find that the photographer will do some touching to it and all that kind of stuff. And they did that Photoshop ad. They put out one hoarding, guys. That hoarding said that every time you crop her photo, you actually crop her confidence. That was the line. What a line. Every time you crop her picture, you crop her confidence. And that started a conversation around the world. Dove didn't have to put money. People after that said, yes, finally someone's calling this out. Finally someone's raising this issue. And after that, I mean, everyone, people, women started sharing their colors, women started sharing their fat, women started sharing their scars, and everyone said everything's beautiful. Right? And that became real beauty. And that's the thing. That's what you want. And that's how brands are going to get built in this new economy where everyone's going to take part in the brand. So that's the next principle. Then the next thing to keep in mind is the fact, classically, this is also an important point. Classically, we've always felt that it's the reach and it's the medium that will determine impact. We've always told clients, sir, if you don't reach at least 60 to 70% of your audience, you will not get the desired results. We've always told clients saying, sir, agar aapko, like I'll tell you classic, hum log kya bolte hain to clients. We'll always tell him, sir, agar aapko Indian male ko target karna hai, to cricket to lena hi padega. बगैर क्रिकेट लिए तो आपको मिलेगा ही नहीं, आप will not reach anywhere. You want to target this audience, ये तो लेना ही पड़ेगा. The reality, that's how classically we have always looked at it. And brands like Lux have spent, they've paid through their nose, they've spent crores and crores, gotten every Bollywood heroine, tried to do all that stuff. The reality today is, it's the message which is driving the impact. Very, very important difference. It is no longer about the medium. क्या फर्क पड़ता है आपकी एड टीवी पे आई या आपकी एड ट्विटर में किसी ने शेयर की? The reality is, if a shark video can get 9.5 billion views and something put on Doordarshan that does not even get 10, then that's a problem. And that's what we are solving for. Imagine, and now I'm giving you a contrast, okay? Lux spends about 60, 70, 80 crores on advertising. And there was this small, but small in India brand called Sebamed. They wanted to take them on, okay? And this is a great example of guerrilla marketing. They released this ad, guys. Did you know the pH of Lux is the same as Rin? And log hil gaye ad ko dekh ke, right? Because imagine Rin is something that you want should be harsh, because here you are saying collar ka mail nikalna hai, nikalna hai, nikalna hai, right? And you've got Lux, which you're thinking, oh, you're imagining Kareena Kapoor, and all their ads also show heroines in bathtubs, rose petals, foam, and everyone's bathing. And suddenly you are told your Lux is as harsh as your Rin bar. And therefore Sebamed. 5.5. Forget the fact that the lawyers at Hindustan Unilever could not sleep for a week. They were told you can't go home till you file enough cases against this company. That's a separate conversation. But the reality is, Sebamed with one ad, one Times of India cover page ad, started more conversation than Lux could with this, very, very harmless, innocuous ad of just showing heroines having a bath. Right? And that's the point I'm trying to make, that don't get bogged into saying to make an impact, I need 50 crores. I need to be on IPL. No, not true. Your message needs to be powerful. If you are going to be the 12th company that is going to say, I give you good network, of course, you will not make an impact because everyone's talking about good network. But if you say something else, which Airtel did, for example, when they said we're an honest network, we will tell you kahan pe signal aa raha hai, kahan pe nahi aa raha hai. You will make conversation. So that's the point at this point, saying what's the meat in your message, and that's going to make a difference. Then the next one is this whole thing about, we've for too long put too much of emphasis and bonus on differentiation. We've kept telling us, oh, differentiation, Kotler tells us differentiation, David Archer tells us differentiation. And now a gentleman called Byron Sharp, right, who's written a seminal book on marketing, highly recommended, which is how brands grow, right? He challenges that. He says, why do brands need to be different? If all that consumers want, for example, from a food brand is taste, for the sake of differentiation, why should I say something else because someone else is saying taste? And why should I try and do that? Like, here's an example, for example, of this very iconic mint brand, right? Altoids, that very expensive brand. They talk about how they're an extremely strong mint, right? And they do this kind of advertising. Mint so strong, they come in a metal box, right? But the point is, today, the reality is it's not about differentiation anymore. The name of the game is affiliation. And what do I mean by affiliation? I mean, as a consumer, do I feel that as a brand you understand me? Can I say as a consumer to a brand saying, "Arey yaar, tu to mera bhai hai, tu samjha mere ko." You understand what I do. And one brand which I love in this space, and all of you on this call would love this brand, is the Imperial Blue campaign of Men Will Be Men. Right? It doesn't talk about whiskey. It doesn't try to be pretentious. It doesn't try and say why this, what is so special about this, and so on and so forth. It just makes a simple thing saying, boss, men are men. It shows you simple situations, saying how men pull in their tummy when there is a woman around, how men will change the tire of a strange woman, how men will give up their aisle seat in an aeroplane because a lady will sit there next to them. And it just celebrates the quirk of men. And suddenly you like that as a brand. You say, "Arey yaar, koi to samjha." I mean, everyone's criticizing this. I remember a campaign that we did on ICICI Prudential, and most of you would have seen this campaign. We did a campaign called Bande Achhe Hain. Okay, which became iconic, which became part of pop culture. It was a simple campaign where we realized everyone was criticizing men, the whole society. Someone saying, "Oh, men are not responsible." Some are saying, "Oh, men are not cultured." Someone are saying, "Oh, men don't respect the opposite." And we suddenly realized that, I mean, give the man a break, yaar. I mean, matlab, you've made a villain out of him. And therefore you kind of just showed the world the other side of the man, saying, "Theek hai, men may have some shortcomings, but who doesn't? But there are 10 things good about a man as well," which got put as Gande Achhe, and suddenly everyone's like, I mean, yes, this is the brand that got me. So remember, affiliation becomes the name of the game and not necessarily differentiation. And then the last rule I want to put out is the fact that, for very long, this saying has been, used, saying any publicity is good publicity. Most of us have studied it in business school also, where people will tell you, "Arey, kuch to publicity milega." Like, I still remember, I mean, I remember I used to be in school at that point in time when this film had released, Khalnaik. Okay. And this film released at a time when Sanjay Dutt had been charged for the arms in his house and all that kind of stuff. He had just served a jail term, was inside jail, and all that conversation was happening. And then you released Nayak Nahi Khalnayak Hu Main. It was otherwise. Today, if you go back to this film, na, you will say, "Boss, ऐसी तो 555 फिल्में Bollywood में." It was a very common film, very standard story. But suddenly it got so much publicity because of what was happening with Sanjay Dutt and his life, and therefore it became a real life thing, saying "Nayak nahi, Khalnayak hu main." That line became iconic. "Ji haan, main hu Khalnayak," and all of that happened, right? But that's the time at that point in time. Today, if you think about it, any publicity is not good publicity, because there are times, like, look at these memes that went out when there was that report that one lady did that entire test and put out a report to say there are pesticides in Coke. And then the meme army started saying farmers of Punjab are using Coke because it is the cheapest pesticide. Now imagine when you've got, look at this line, Coca-Cola used as pesticide by farmers since it's cheaper and gets the job. And there are thousands of these memes, right? Now imagine this kind of publicity. Which parent would tomorrow want to give a glass? And somehow Coca-Cola still managed to control it, but it's done irreversible damage to the brand. If you think about it, the brand equity over the years has been eroding. The market share over the years has been eroding. And then therefore the point is, in this world, we can't just say कि कुछ तो कर दो, कुछ publicity मिलेगा, जो भी मिलेगा चलो publicity. No, that's not true. That doesn't work like that, right? I mean, one can argue, "Oh, all this is going to help Aryan Khan launch as a hero." Of course, that's not true anymore. That doesn't work like that anymore. And therefore, that's something that we've got to keep in mind, right? And then therefore, if we were to look at all of this, what we've got to realize is, and the point that to be made is that, for creating impact, there are two things that I want to say. And then, we'll open it up for a conversation. One, you need to be in the conversation. You can't stay out of it. You can't say, "I will do some communication and mera to ho gaya." You can't just do that. The game is conversation. Dunya abhi conversation mein chal rahi hai, so we have to be where the world is, right? We can't be in our own island. Second is, you have to be with the conversation, which means how is the conversation moving? How is it evolving? What is the conversation around? Otherwise, you seem outdated, right? Otherwise, you seem obsolete. How many times you and I have had a problem when we talk to a nephew or niece? Like, I've got a 15-year-old nephew. I can't have a conversation with him because most of what he talks about, I don't even know what he's saying, right? So therefore, the reality is that brands today, one, they always need to be in the conversation. They can't just stick to those 3 campaigns done in a year. And 2, they've got to be with the conversation. And here's some data from that point of view. Twitter did this study, right? And across a very large database of Twitter brands, 73% correlation between brand conversation being culturally relevant. Okay, which is to say, brands which were having Twitter conversations which were in sync with what people were talking about saw 73% better revenues than the other brands. And then these were some of the conversations on well-being, conversations on everyone being a creator, conversations about, you know, everyday wonders, conversation about one planet, conversations about technology, conversations about what is my own identity. And therefore, today the point is, you as a brand cannot say, I will say what I want to say. Sorry, it doesn't work. It's like a group of friends. It's like you've gone drinking with a group of friends. If they are going to chat about stock market, you can't say, no, I will come and talk about Tesla. They will talk about stock market. You've got to talk about stock market. And that's the way it is. Today, as brands, we need to understand that if our audience is talking about a certain matter, we have to get our hands dirty with that conversation. And that is the time that we'll really make it. And that is the time we'll really start making the difference. And that's what we've got to keep in mind. And therefore, the point that I'm really leaving you with is that, you know, the old school was really asking yourself, what am I communicating? What is my USP? You would put your own judgment on it, saying, oh, is it looking nice? That's not the way of looking at it. We should say, would people relate to this as a conversation? What would they say after it when they read this? Will they share it? I mean, you may argue it doesn't matter to me if they share it or not, but understand that sharing is not just a measure. It's a surrogate of the fact that people endorse what you're saying, because you do not share things till you believe in them. And then therefore, that's the thing that we've got to look at. And if we're able to do this, and therefore in this world, I mean, perhaps Gandhi was the world's greatest conversation leader, zero ad budget. And I'm just calling it ad budget, right? He always, and not even the power of internet, he convinced all of India and some of Britain also that India should be independent. That's the conversation we've got to lead. And to do that, we need to just think about, you know, it's not about the big budget anymore. It's not about 100 crore campaign anymore. It's about small things. This Van Damme video, when they made him do the split, the epic split, it's a video that got 59 million views, 20,000 editorials, 70 million euros earned in free media. Just doing one stunt of a Van Damme split between this, right? And that's the power that you've got to look at. And from that point of view, I'm not playing it in the interest of time. See all your marketing efforts. And this is my last slide. See all your marketing efforts as fireworks. What do I mean by that? जब हम एक अनार जलाते हैं, वो एक छोटा सा हम अनार को लाइट करते हैं, but when it goes in the sky, it becomes a big spectacle. But it's a spectacle for 10 seconds and then it is done. So instead of looking for some very, very big things, think about yourself as having to light an anar every day. हर दिन हमें कुछ करना है जो एक स्पेक्टिकल क्रिएट करेगा, एक कॉन्वर्सेशन क्रिएट करेगा, and then next day we need to then again think of what's the next firework. Because if we think about, no, I will do one big 100 crore thing, then I can't light 365 days and hours. And therefore, do small things, but make sure each small one can create a big spectacle. And as long as we can do that, as long as you can do the Domino's Mirabai Channu, as long as you can do the Fevicol Cristiano Ronaldo, you will continue to create conversation with very, very small budgets. Yeah, so that's the world of the conversation economy, and that's what I had. Let's have a conversation. I'm sorry, I think I've overshot in terms of time, but hopefully.
Well, let me tell you something, Rishabh. On behalf of everyone here, I'm sure. Wow, it was very captivating. I think all of us really, we are all involved in terms of looking at this dimension of things. So what we'll do is, obviously, again, with limited time, we'll just take one question, and then we'll move to a vote of thanks. So I think there's one question which is on the chat. Rishun, I would request if you can just unmute and maybe ask the question one on one.
Well, I'm to be honest, I'm I'm wordless. The session was just outstanding. I think big thanks to the team which always brings these kind of sessions. And Rishabh, you are just amazing. I also belong to a small town in Punjab, Moga.
Super. I know Moga. I've lived in Firozpur for 2 years.
Okay. And it's amazing. I mean, what you said was absolutely, I'm 200% with you. But the only question I have is how practical is it? And how can we bring this to life? I am a person who is very result oriented and I am very action oriented. Hey, how can we put this in action is my question, because I'm still surrounded with people who don't want to take the risk, who don't want to change their mindset, who are still stuck with the same structure, same bureaucracy, and same philosophy, like the old school philosophy.
No, absolutely. No, I think that's a very fair challenge, and I'm not even sure I have an answer to it. And the reality is that's a challenge I think we face on a day-to-day basis, right? Which is clients just wanting to do more of the same, clients wanting to play it safe. But I think what I've at least noticed is that once a client tastes blood, I think it's that one first time, like I'll give you an example of something we've just done, 2 months ago. We've released this very large campaign on first cry. I'll urge you guys to even see it online, called Fussy is Fantastic. Okay. It's a campaign where, till then that brand was selling some offers, 30% off, 20% off, 40% off, and so on and so forth. And then when we spoke to them, we said, isse kya hoga? Everyone's giving these offers. Amazon, aap 30% bol rahe ho, Amazon 40% bolega. We said, who are you selling to? They said, okay, mothers we're selling to. We said, let's do something that touches hearts rather than trying to talk about the purse. And we found this insight. We said one of the things that happens is that mothers these days constantly get criticized by people around them for their parenting. So some, mother-in-law will say, अरे तुम तो मतलब ज्यादा ही करते थे आजकल, तुम तो मतलब हमारे टाइम पे तो ये नहीं होता था, तुम्हारे तो ज्यादा ही नखरे हैं, तुम्हारे तो ज्यादा ही टोटके हैं, तुम लोग तो ज्यादा, and so on and so forth. And we just created a campaign called Fussy is Fantastic. We said to every mother out there, keep fussing as much as you want. You will not believe this. That campaign has been shared by the likes of, say, a Kareena Kapoor, by the likes of, say, an Aishwarya Rai on their handles. I mean, imagine these are people who, if they want, can charge lakhs to share your video. And now the client is realizing, saying, boss, you're right. Ye ek baar jo maine have conversation, and now it has taken, it's spread like forest fire. Everyone's doing their own number on tagging for first cry. Fussy is fantastic. So I think the challenge, I think what we've got to do is I think somewhere got to just keep on pushing our clients and get them to start small with some one thing where we can tell them कि sir नहीं भी हुआ तो देखो downside इसका limited है, try करते हैं. And I've seen once they try it and एक बार मतलब मुंह खून लग जाता है, then they just want more of it, and then there's no stopping.
Thank you.
Right. I'm sure there are more questions. However, in the interest of time again, what I will request is if you can just post on the questions to me, maybe Rishabh, if you would allow, we can share if there are questions coming in, and maybe
happy to. I think yes. If there's a list of questions that Chandan you send my way, I promise I'll kind of take the time out and reply to each one of them.
I'm sure. So also giving you a gratitude won't be easy, but we'll try. I mean, the best we have got is Jay. I would request, by the way, Jay, to everyone an update. Jay just finished his book and it is on Amazon as well. Succeeding in Business, Nurturing Value in Family Business. Is something which is out on Amazon. I'm sure with the way Jay is and his own experience, I'm sure it will be a fascinating one. So I'll request Jay if you can just propose the vote of thanks as well for Rishabh, please.
Yeah. So I guess, Rishabh, the fact that, despite the time issue that you mentioned, 14 of us are still here, shows that, as you said in the last slide, can we relate? Is the message relating to the audience that you're talking to? I mean, the proof is here, right? We're all here still, So can we relate with it? What will he say after it? I think, as Chandan said, I'm sure you'll be flooded with a lot of questions. Rishun spoke on behalf of a number of us. Number of issues are there. And I guess fat men will no longer, I wanted to ask you that, saying for a fat man, you look remarkably like the Dove guy, saying beauty is in all shapes, right? So you're there. And you started with Fair and Lovely, and we all know that Fair and Lovely decided to, I don't know whether was it your advice or other people's advice. So we are all glowing now. We are all handsome, all men here, unfortunately. But so it's glow and handsome as far as we are concerned, because the conversation has changed. Globally, the conversation has changed. But the best part of any discussion on marketing and advertising, etc., is that these conversations never stop. And I think all of us in other parts of management consulting always like to, listen to what marketing expert or advertising expert, and I'm using this in a very loose way, these terms, because if nothing else, as Rishabh said again in the chat, I'm laughing. We enjoyed the session. So thank you for joining us. Chandan, thank you for bringing such a wonderful guest. And we have people from different chapters here. As always, we have Umakant and Pradeep from Ahmedabad and a number of others whom I'm meeting for the first time. But thank you. I'm referring to Pradeep Desai, Pradeep Kumar. I'm sorry, we haven't met yet. So really, and Sunil, I think you also mentioned a few things about how interesting the session was. So thank you so much on behalf of IMCI, not just Pune chapter. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. Cheers.
Just
Cheers.
one request from everyone, if you can just switch on your video if you can. I'll just take a screenshot of it and maybe just share it as well with everyone. Maybe we can create some sort of a conversation around it.
Yeah.
Just 1 second. Yeah. Right. So Vikas and Suresh sir and Praveen, if you can also switch on your video. Excellent.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Rishabh, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. It was a
Lovely.
pleasure, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, folks.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Bye-bye.